So good afternoon, everyone. Many of you already know Dr. Kazmerski, who's been visiting us here for about a month, and some of you have interacted with him. I would, however, like to just give a very brief introduction to Dr. Kazmerski. Dr. Kazmerski is Emeritus Research Staff Member of the National Renewable Energy Lab, the Fellow of the Renewable and Sustainable Energy Institute at the University of Colorado, and of course, importantly for us, is Distinguished Visiting Professor at IIT Bombay. Some of you may know that he's been visiting about every year except for the break of about 3 years due to COVID. He's a pioneer in the area of solar photovoltaics and has worked in the area since 1970. He was a founding director of the National Center for Photovoltaics at NREL during 1999 to 2008, about 10 years. Dr. Kazmerski has more than 350 publications and many invited talks, and he's been recognized with several national and international awards, including, for example, the World PV Prize, the ABS Peter Mark Memorial Award, and several others. Also, I'll mention that he is a life fellow of the IEEE, a fellow of APS, an elected member of the US National Academy of Engineering, and a foreign fellow of the Indian National Academy of Engineering. And in fact, the talk today is co-organized by NCPRE, which of course you all know about, also POTIC, for which Anil is the professor in charge, the Photovoltaics Innovation and Technology Center at IIT Bombay, but also the Mumbai chapter of the Indian National Academy of Engineering and the Bombay section IEEE Life Members Affinity Group, LMAG. Since, of course, Dr. Kazmerski is a life fellow of the IEEE. So these three organizations have come together. Four organizations have come together to organize this talk, and it's a pleasure now to have Dr. Kazmerski talk to us about amazing photovoltaics, from research curiosity, which is what he started off really with about 40, 50 years ago, to technology reality, which is where we are today. Dr. Kazmerski.
Well, there it is. Thank you very, very much, sir, and thank you all for coming, and also for the Academy office, so to be able to talk to this and all the students. So, Juicer said I could talk for 45 minutes, so I'll go up to that time and then stop. I probably got more material there, but it's more important to and if you have any questions during this, or if you want to correct me, more and more times that happens now, is that students know more than we do. And thank you for only taking me back to 1970, because my career started as an undergraduate student in photovoltaics, working on thin film space cells in I can remember on this, so about 1966 was my first stuff working with cadmium sulfide solar cells for space. So this is terrible. So I have been working on this, as I figured out, for over 50 years on this. This is bad. And that's why I'm going to talk about this over this period that I've lived this all on this. No one here, was anybody here born in 1954? Just really big on this. So and this is the modern age of photovoltaics. Okay, photovoltaics wasn't born yesterday. Okay, and it took a while to come. But quite frankly, the last 10 years, the last decade, have been the critical part of photovoltaics. But I'll take you back a little further than that. So for some reason, this seems to be slow in coming. So maybe what I'll do is so I'm going to go not all the way back right now, but to give some flavor of what's happening in photovoltaics, I'm gonna go back to this publication in 1992. And at this time, as we do now, okay, you know, I was at at NREL then, okay, we always reported DOE program type stuff. And up here in the corner, you can see what the department, what the status was in 1991 and what the goals were. And this is pretty interesting because if you look at module efficiencies for that they expected sometime between 2010 and 2030, that's not too bad, right? 15% to 25%. And most of this stuff now is about 20% per module. So not too bad there. But if you look at electricity prices, okay, and you say, oh, 5 cents a kilowatt hour, that's great. But don't forget, these are $1991. So in 2023 dollars, this is very good. Okay, but back then, if we used 1992 dollars, it's not good. And if you look at the installed capacity in the United States, it says between 10 gigawatts and 50 gigawatts. And the installed capacity right now is about three times that 50 gigawatts in the United States. So this is why we called it amazing, because it has gone much quicker, okay, than a lot of us had thought. Oh, there it is. So if we look at this, at the world module shipments, at the same time, you can see in 1990 was about 46 megawatts. Then in 1992, about 16 megawatts, okay? And the entire world shifted photovoltaics into the markets. And to give some idea, this is the Bhadra solar plant in Rajasthan. It has 2.2 or 2.3 gigawatts, okay? About 40 times the entire world shipments that we had in 1992. So photovoltaics over this last 30 years has grown incredibly, all right? So realize that, and most of that growth has been really in the last, as I said, last decade. All right, here are the annual shipments now. These are the shipments, okay, from all the manufacturers into the world. This is followed by Paula Mintz. Paula Mintz is a independent person who NREL has used for years to track these modules. And she's very careful to watch out for double shipments and triple shipments. For instance, to give you an idea, is that China might make a solar cell. Okay, it might ship it, okay, to Vietnam. And they count it as a shipment, some people do. And then Vietnam will ship it to India, to one of their plants that might be here, okay, buying. So another shipment. And then India will make it into a module and sell it, and they will count it as a shipment. That's 3 shipments, but it's really only 1. So she accounts for all that, and it's fairly conservative on her estimates. But incredibly, if you look at this in okay, in 2022, last year, all right, there were about 283 gigawatts shipped in 1 year into the world markets. 283 gigawatts in that single year. And if you look at this, this is, as I say here, that's truly amazing. Okay, the title of this talk. And what you're seeing here are 25 to 35% a year annual growth in shipments. So these are annual shipments. On the whole thing, at 45% growth from 2021 on this, but oh, let me go back. Seem to have lost the slide in here. But anyway, we could ask on this, okay, where is it all coming from on the shipments? And if you look at the shipments In 2021, okay, was mainly from China on this, with a number of other countries. It didn't change much in 2022. So both of these on here, but still China on the whole thing were about 70% of all the shipments came out of China. Now you can look on here and see Malaysia, Vietnam, South Korea, Thailand, Taiwan, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, all Asian countries. So about 92% or 90, almost all of our photovoltaics came from Asia. So in fact, if you look at it even more closely, you'll see that many of those companies in Vietnam and Malaysia are owned by the Chinese. So you'll have Trina producing photovoltaics, say, in Malaysia, but that's a China-owned company. So, and if we look at the manufacturers on this whole thing, you can see that they're mainly in China, except for the last one for solar, okay, that we used to say was Vietnam and Malaysia. But now, okay, with the levels of production in those two, in India and the United States, okay, I think it's about 6 gigawatts here in China and in the US on this. And so these are rather substantial, all producing the latest module. India is producing, only India and the United States are producing First Solar Series 7 modules. All the other locations are still doing Series 6. They don't want to let that technology out so easily. Interesting, as I said, that over 90% of the shipments are accounted by China and companies. So if we look at these annual shipments, we looked at annual shipments, but what's more interesting are what are the cumulative installations? Okay, who's using this? How much of this is being used to produce these green electrons? Okay, out of the photovoltaics. Even though you ship 283 gigawatts of modules, you don't use all of them. Okay, part of that goes in, some of it's in inventory and everything else. So, and some inventory from the year before gets installed and everything like that. So if you look at the reports on this, you can see this is out of REN 21. Okay, one quick place that tracks this whole thing. Say that it's about at the end of 2022, about 1.1 terawatts of photovoltaics. And in fact, on the cumulative side, they passed the terawatt thing early in 2022. To give an idea about this, are there any wind people here on this? Wind just passed a terawatt this year. So photovoltaics is actually now running ahead of wind, okay, for power production. So where is it being used? Is my thinking correct? Can you tell what it says? Yeah, it's perfect. Yes? Yeah. Thank you, Google Translate on this thing. Quite good though. So if we look at where it's going, okay, you know, photovoltaics and wind and renewables accounted for about 82% of the power expansions in the world. All right. So about 80, and if you look at this, somewhere around 300 gigawatts, okay, came from renewables and expanding the power coming from the company. So about 80, and if you look even closer on this whole thing, that photovoltaics accounts for about 2/3 of that. So of that, about 240 gigawatts comes from PV on capacity expansion. So quite a substantial thing. Really, it's quite amazing on this. So that the power structure in the world is switching over and using renewables. So I think we have to look at that expanding the power base, they're starting to use the renewables, especially PV and wind. Yeah, the two dependents on this. Oops. So if we look at the top 10 countries on cumulative installed on this, And this is for on this, and you can see it's China first, US second, Japan third, India fourth. I noticed that in the conference last week, we were at the this is a combination of data from two sources that are reporting this. So they had India fifth, and they said soon it will be passing Germany. And some other sources says it has passed it already. And quite frankly, I think very, very soon it's going to be passing Japan, at least in the third place on this. So this is where it's being installed. This 1,180, 1.1 terawatts. And you can see where it's mainly being added. Okay, on this one that India has prepped up on this thing that being tracked on this for the last 10 years as third on this. But it's something very, very incredible. There are two countries on here that didn't appear before on importing. One is Brazil, which is an emerging market. And the big surprise out here is Poland. And if you look where Poland is located, you say, what's happening there? And I think part of the issue is what's happening in the war in Ukraine, very much affecting them, that they're bringing in lots of renewables, that they're right next to Russia, of course, so they're right next to Ukraine, and so they're trying to build up their power structure as well. Okay, by the way, they had something there about note that China, okay, added more than 100 gigawatts in 1 year into their power structure. So this is there's also just an amazing menu of applications. Okay, the built environment, agrivoltaics, and there was just a seminar today on floating PV as well. So these are all applications that are expanding. Still need a lot of work. Okay, a lot of research is going into these things, but they are big parts. And of course, also in some other areas as well. Okay, transportation. That's what we would like to do is use electric vehicles, but with our electric vehicles, we like to charge them not with coal, but with renewables. For instance, EV is a big contender in here. And lately, a lot that we heard last week at that conference as well was green hydrogen. And of course, IIT Bombay is working on this. And all we heard last week, all the time, is that green hydrogen means solar. And we really heard green hydrogen means photovoltaics. That if you're going to be producing the hydrogen, it has to come from a clean source to make it green. You know, they have all kind of colors for hydrogen now that you want to do. But the clean one is green, okay, and EV has a big part, okay, in that sector. Okay, so I did this about 2002. I think that this will play on here. I hope so. That this is kind of the look at what hydrogen is. Remember, hydrogen economy worked itself up in 2002, how it was going to be a big part, but it kind of fizzled after that. And in fact, this was one look on how it may help, and maybe now it's appropriate for this whole thing. So you have these solar parks, and then you look about having the total bill, okay, that you have PV, solar, okay, and you come in, and maybe in your house at this time, you might have, remember, light. You have an electrolyzer and a fuel cell. The fuel cell gives you 24-hour power. The electrolyzer is used, powered by the photovoltaics in order to give you hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen and oxygen might be stored underground like that, so that you have some storage of the important parts of the system as well. And then if you look at this and come in, and then you have your vehicle structure also that this was done when we had freedom in the United States. So you have your hydrogen car and only leaves water behind on it. That's the output. And so if you come into this and you can see the photovoltaic car parts there that might be charging your electric vehicles. It also can be part of pumping finally, if we look at these groups, that these groups might not just be photovoltaics on this, then in fact, if you look at it, and take this out, there might be a combination of the thin film photovoltaics up there, but also the ability to have to produce the hydrogen and oxygen from some thin film electrolyzer that's up there, and maybe the really big solution might be to have the electrochemical solution that deals with policy directly breaking down water. So that was kind of a look at this back, and now people are looking at this again. All right, so technology comes around on this whole thing, and we'll see how far maybe now the funding will be sufficient to go ahead to make concepts like this. Oops. So the range of these applications go from very, very small to very large. Okay, and that's a 5 gigawatt installation. Okay, run by an IIT Bombay person in Dubai. So now this range, you can see a photovoltaic, and it's one of the strengths. If you can match this power source to your application. Kilowatts all the way up to tens of gigawatts. So I'm going to give you a caution now. Okay, all this positive stuff I've been talking about, okay, is talking about power. Gigawatts, terawatts, watts, all that good stuff. So us as electrical engineers like to talk about watts. But us as consumers, okay, talk a little differently. All right, and that is that there is a terawatt challenge to get. And they say that in order to have a big impact on 100% renewable, you need about 75 terawatts by mid-century. Quite frankly, right now with the growth, we're running a little bit ahead. So last week there was a really good presentation. I thought that the modeling that was used to get to 75 gigawatts, and the most aggressive one, okay, that right now photovoltaics for the installation running ahead of that. So I think that's the good news. The bad news is that and the companies think that by maybe 5 years, 8 years, that they're going to have terawatt per year production of photovoltaics. So that the industry is very, very positive about reaching that as well. The problem is that us as consumers, okay, work with this. We pay our electricity bills by not watts, we pay it by kilowatt hours. And so we worry about this. And why this is important is that this electricity, the photovoltaics only produces that power for the sun shines. So we really have a terawatt hour challenge. And that's why in this whole thing that the importance of storage is that the 24-hour electricity delivery, whether it's wind or photovoltaics or whatever it is, okay, we need in all these sectors. You know, we haven't penetrated the building sector very much with photovoltaics. We haven't penetrated the industry sector very much. We penetrated the power sector very, very well so far, and that's where the major growth is. But all these other ones, if you're going to penetrate them, okay, we can store it. And so there's a lot of work that's being done, whether it's batteries, whether it's other mechanisms, whether it's hydrogen, okay, and being able to store this power so that we have available. Well, now that's where we are. Okay, everything is great except we need storage. So far, I think that's the big thing. Is anybody here working on batteries, or on hydrogen? And there's real opportunities in both of those areas, and a lot of electrical engineering, a lot of mechanical engineering, a lot of civil engineering into all these areas as well. So that and chemical. So I think all probably your backgrounds fit with that. So let me go back to the 1950s, all right, where modern photovoltaics really did start. Okay, I'm going to show this. This was from the New York Times, and it pointed out that there's a new device in 1954 came out of Bell Telephone Laboratories. All right, made of strips of silicon, the principal ingredient, okay, of common sand. Something we still tell people today, the silicon it just comes from sand. It doesn't come from just sand. It comes from quartzite, which is a special kind that you really want to have a boron content. So on the whole things, and it says with this modern version of Apollo's chariot, the Bell scientists have harnessed enough sun rays to power the transmission of voices over telephone wires. Beams of sunlight have also provided electricity for a transistor and a radio train. But of course, now we use photovoltaics on your iPhones, smartphones, and everything else. We do much more than that. But this was really the part that was at the start. And if we look at this, these were the inventors and visionaries, the innovators for this whole thing. Gerald Pearson, Darrell Chapin, and Calvin Fuller. All right, they produced the first cells that were reported in April of 1954 at about 6% efficiency. Not great now, okay, on this, but at that time it was rather astounding. So at that time, by the way, I think I was in 4th grade on this, and I still remember, okay, the teacher, okay, coming in, Sister Denise, and telling this thing in the paper that the Bell Telephone Laboratories, which is our telephone company, has solved all of our problems for electricity. So, as the New York Times report kind of said, and this is what they look like. They deploy these things for telephone repeaters in the southeastern part of the United States. It kind of was the first demonstration of terrestrial deployment. However, it didn't work. Why? It was too expensive. It worked great, all right, on the whole thing, but it just cost too much at that time. You're talking now about cents per kilowatt hour. Back then, they were talking about hundreds of dollars per kilowatt hour to do that, and that just even for the telephone company. So they abandoned it for that application. The work didn't stop on it though. As we came to 1958, which is a big year. Why is that a big year? No, that's when IIT Bombay started. I thought that everyone would say that, and I think back then, whoops. I hope it's here. That's what it looked like a little later on this. And my question always, this is from the director's office, by the way, is where are the trees? There were no trees back then. I think you only had crocodiles and leopards and dogs. Okay, that was the whole thing on campus. But that 1958 was significant because IIT Bombay was founded. That was 65 years ago. This is the 65th birthday. Well, I'm older than IIT Bombay. But at the same time, okay, we had another significant, whoops. Come on, it seems to go backwards easier. At this time, we also had another significant photovoltaics event. And if we look at this, okay, in October of 1957, the year before, Sputnik went up. And this was a great scare for the world. The Soviet Union looked like their technology was way ahead of anyone else's, and it inspired a lot of people then at that time in science and technology. So that's a very, very good thing. The same thing I hope is happening now, that the condition with global climate change, okay, with the air, especially in Delhi on this thing, is going to scare a lot of young people like you into science and technology. because that's where the future is, to be able to solve a lot of these problems. So that happened, and right after that, okay, 65 years ago, on March 17th, 1958, this took place. Let's see if this plays. I don't hear the sound, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to do anything. This rocket went up carrying a satellite. And the satellite was very special if you look at it, because it was powered by photovoltaics. And it was the first satellite put up there that was solar powered. Vanguard actually failed twice before this went up, and finally took off, and it was successful out there, okay, on the launch. It was a beautiful looking rocket. I still remember this very well. So I was in 7th grade at this time. Vanguard went up, and this I remember because I was everyone got into space stuff, rockets and all these things at that time. So did all this stuff. And so went up there and successfully put that satellite in orbit. Back then, I don't think we got to see the rest of this. Let's go on. Okay, so I put this first solar powered satellite on March 17th, 1958. And you can see that the power from each of those things is not very much, about 5 milliwatts. And in case you want to see what it looks like, I just happen to have, okay, now this is, as I found out now, okay, it was backup satellite when it was in 1958, number 5. But it was given to Huffman Electronics, the people who developed the solar cell company. So their major thing was not to really launch this, but rather to test this for the transmitter that put out the beep with the solar cell. And you can look at these later. That's one thing, if you look at this very carefully, you can see that some modern technology, one of which is taking shingle solar cell. In 1958, we shingled solar cell. And the reason is they've got more power for you to carry out of it. So no contacts and steer the light on these things. So this went up 1958 and actually put out the PPP because the managers for this project in Naval Research Lab didn't think that these things would work. So they made no mechanism to turn them off. For 2 weeks, it ran off of batteries. That was a reliable source. The batteries died. Solar cell took over, and for the next 7 years, it was powered by photovoltaics. The first demonstration of reliability. So you can still track Vanguard. It's the oldest piece of space debris up there. If you go to the site, you can see it, and it was put into a very, very good art. And sometime in 2022 or 2023 is when it's supposed to again interact with our atmosphere and be able to come down. The solar cells lasted, even though until the electronics went out when the satellite intercepted the Van Allen belt, the radiation belt up there that they didn't even know about when they launched satellites. So it turned out to be a very, very good thing. And it really was a demonstration that this was the power of the space. And certainly this opened up our first markets. And nothing much was done for photovoltaics until the early 1970s. And then PV turned from space to terrestrial needs because of the oil embargo, the oil prices at that time. The world again became turbulent, so we didn't have energy. The Middle East, okay, was holding up shipments, had no gasoline, we stood in lines for this and everything. And as a result, the world turned toward looking for other energy sources, among them photovoltaics. And so a lot of things grew out of that. I like to look at this is that when I came to NREL or to Syria in 1977, here, the price for photovoltaics, okay, was about $77 a watt. That in 2022 dollars was about $350 a watt. So it was very, very expensive, and you can see something. Well, this is President Carter visited us in 1978. This is the director of the laboratory. And I hate to say it, but that's me on the other side of Carter. They actually let me close to the president. It's hard to believe this. And this thing went down as a function of time. We look at this, and if we look at the evolution of this, and when China came in 2010, 2011, this was really the tipping point for us as consumers to be able to use photovoltaics. China showed us how to bring down the cost with mass production. But always, if you have good news, you always have some bad news on this. And that comes with the China syndrome. They brought it down to 50 cents a watt. Okay, the problem is with manufacturing dominated by a single source. Okay, you have one source for anything, you could have problems. For instance, you have to diversify your manufacturing on this, because if you don't, okay, any geopolitical problems, say China stopped selling manufacturing equipment to India for photovoltaics, what would happen? This would cause a problem with the manufacturing. Didn't that just happen? So right now, China said that they're not going to sell PV manufacturing stuff into the Indian markets. So something has to happen to do this. So this is a geopolitical problem, okay, on the whole thing, and so some things have to be solved. I'm just going to skip and go on this and look at that. What's happened? This is the data that just arrived about 4 days ago from Paula Minson, and he said what the PV module prices are worldwide. And you can see right now, okay, talk about amazing. Okay, at 15 to 33 cents a watt. It's always higher in the United States because of tariffs. So that top curve on there is the U.S. So that's kind of the range on this. But if you look at this, I heard 2 weeks ago that India, that people are buying modules now at about 12 to 13 cents a watt. That really was no one. If you talk to people back in the 1980s, even the early 1990s, no one would have brought up prices like that for modules. So truly, we have come to an amazing part of this. I think that. Okay, well, what about technology? There's the original. This is one of the bell cells from 1956, about 1956. And you can look at it. There's a patent on the whole thing. And I like this because once again, remember we saw shingle cells. They not only were ahead of their time, okay, with the technology. These cells. We look at this, whether that or the ones being manufactured by the own manufacturer at that time, Bachman Electronics, on this, come on, look like this. Okay, this is just an animation of one of those things from the module. And the cell looked like this. And what was it? It was really a back contact cell. So even back in the 1950s, the people realized there even wanted to put contacts on the front of it. You didn't have to because it obscured the light. So, for instance, Bell Labs, Bachman Electronics, their first cells had this. Wasn't it a very complicated one that we saw from that we see now in the industry, which are interdigitated back contacts like this? They take a lot of engineering, a lot of device know-how, a lot of device physics and everything. But it was one that had distance contacts, okay, from the back of the cell. And the reason for doing that again at the time was to increase power, the same as we're looking at now. Okay, let me go ahead and continue with technology. And you can see on this thing. So if I end at 6, is that okay? So if I look at this whole thing on this chart, okay, you can see on the NREL chart of efficiencies, the diversity has increased in the technologies we have to choose from. I mean, it's quite incredible if you look at this. see the efficiencies going up, with efficiencies up in the range from 20 to even for gallium arsenide based concentrator cells up to near 50% efficient. So this is really something that the science and technology has handled very well, being able to prove the performance of these devices. So device physics, electrical engineers, physicists, every chemical engineers in this whole thing were key to bringing this about. If I think, I'm going to also point out there's a module chart, okay, for NREL at the same time that looks like this. And I'm going to come back to that later because I was very surprised to see this because we just added some points on here that came out just while I had after I had left. But if we look at these cell efficiencies, by the way, I started this chart in 1985. And this is what the first chart looked like. It was a lot easier to handle it then because all we had was amorphous silicon, and copper indium selenide and titanium. It's 4 technologies. Now it's grown into all sorts of things that have come out of that. Let me go back and blow up the silicon part of this thing to look at this. And it's mainly these devices that are 26 to 27% efficient. Now these are research cell efficiencies. These are things that have been validated in one of those world laboratories that has been certified to be able to do this, right? So that this is not just stuff that's reported out of the literature. It may be in the literature, but it's reported with some certification that these are really good results. So let's look at these. So where are these high efficiencies coming from now? Okay, in 2021, the major technology, okay, as you all know, have been PERC cells. So these, it's very difficult to read this a little bit. So the trends, if we look at this, have been for PERC. If we look at what's happened and this is a PERC cell, passivated emitter, passivated rear contact solar cell in cross section. And if we look at 2022, this has continued on this, but we can start to see some other things coming in there. If you look at this slide, you can start to see some growth in this technology, the TOPCon solar cells. And the TOPCon solar cells are shown here, all right, on this, so that these are the tunnel oxide passivated contact solar cells. So they put in a very, very thin oxide that allows the carriers to tunnel through, okay, but passivates that surface extremely well. The big part about TOPCon versus PERC is that if you're making PERC cells on your manufacturing line, it's very easy to convert over to TOPCon. It's not, it doesn't cost almost anything to do, but you get about 1% total more out of the efficiency of the devices, which is a big thing. So the trend is also, if you look at this, toward monocrystalline silicon, toward N-type silicon in the whole thing. And in fact, just recently, in fact, 2 days ago, I got this thing from Solar Flare, okay, that shows indeed, if you look at the capacity for making solar cells in the world, indeed, over half of it now is in TOPCon. So you can see this is, if you talk about innovation, people say, solar is over. Just buy the photovoltaics. You've got the technology, it works, we just ship it in there. But in fact, the technology, just like it does for your cell phone, just like it does for computers, everything changes, gets better. This is showing something that has happened already. Is that very quickly, it's going over to TOPCon now, all right? And who knows, maybe something else is coming. You see that ABC, N-type ABC up there. So those are all back contact solar cells. They still are back contact, but they do some diffusions at different levels and contacting and everything that have some promise. And we're starting to see now another technology in the silicon side creeping in as well. Innovation. Innovation is the basis, okay, for all device technologies, but especially in photovoltaics, silicon certainly, okay, and for our future energy needs as well. So if we look at this, as you saw, it's also a trend for bifacial technologies. These are these silicon solar cells, for instance, but also other technologies that collect the sunlight from both sides. The part that's reflected, the albedo from the ground, is collected on the backside, lines of light, and you get a boost of anywhere from 10% to maybe 30%, okay, in the output power for that technology. Oh, I can see how I can change it better. So here's what the cell looks like, what some of the cells are here. This is the installation in Brazil. The ground is very, very important on this, okay, on what that looks like, because you're depending on the light being reflected from that surface onto there. So lighter surfaces are generally better. For instance, crushed white stones are used many times on this. But this ground cover here provides about a gain of about 5 to 8% for the installation. This is ground covered after. If you look at what's happening with bifacial technology, you can see here, first of all, you look at the price difference between conventional cells and bifacial cells, they're almost the same now. You make a bifacial cell, okay, why make a conventional cell? And that's what we're starting to see, that people are, even in monofacial modules, are using bifacial cells because they produce. And if you look at this data from the International Technology Roadmap for PV, put together here that by 2030, almost everything will be bifacial modules coming out of there. Even if you don't use the bifacial module for a bifacial application, but put it on a roof, for instance, it'll still look like that. That's what's being predicted. So this is a trend for that. And if you look at this entire value chain for photovoltaics, okay, innovation comes throughout the whole thing of the R&D on this, and also now all you hear now is artificial intelligence, okay, machine learning, okay, for all photovoltaics. Now, if you're looking at manufacturing lines, okay, if you're looking at characterization of stuff out in the field, AI is starting to control everything. So that sort of manufacturing line, it can make, by including machine learning in it, it can make corrections that would take maybe hours or days for just a person to go through and find out what's wrong. So this, in this case, in machine learning, is something that's a big boost to technology development. So I'm going to go to the very end. Let me see how I can do this. If you want a copy of this, you can have it. Let me just do this and then end on this, is that point out that, you know, when you have a new product on this whole thing, it takes a while to get from that lab bench to being able to use it. It has to go through all these certification type things. I didn't talk about perovskites. I meant to talk about this a little bit, but you know, you have to give it time. All these technologies, if they don't have time, and in fact, on this whole thing, when I first came to Siri, to NREL in 1977, this cartoon appeared on the bulletin board. Okay, the very cartoon like this. It was in English though, and what it said was something that every researcher, okay, worries about, and that is, what about funding? So here's Moses giving these tablets and everything, and he's asking, but God, what about funding for these? So it's the same thing we have this. If you don't have consistent funding for technology, it really can interrupt its development. And I was always very asking this, when are these perovskite people gonna be able to come, because they were very, very positive and aggressive about getting stuff to market. And when I came here, finally at IIT Bombay, I was given some clues about this company called, oops, this is IIT Bombay's work. And it says everything that's going good. I love this cartoon that we did. So what they're saying is that, well, silicon can be approved by these perovskites. That's very, very true. And if we look at it, the trend now is the carbon-based perovskites. They're more stable. They don't have quite the efficiency. But what has happened is now some commercial outfits are now starting to produce it. And this one, going to their website, are selling modules, selling perovskite modules. Okay, so they claim that a warranty of 25 years, and they pass the certification test for these. I also found another one when I looked at this module thing. I called up NREL and said, "What is this company that's on this?" And they said, "Yes, we measured their module at about 18.2%. There's one at 18.6%. So there's their record for another one that they reported in this whole thing. In fact, they had a small module about 20%. But I asked on their website, they said that they're producing these, but they're not selling them. Even though you get the idea, they are NREL told that it's still in the research operation. But it gives some idea that you can produce large areas now of this technology that just came on very, very quick. So innovation, okay, is big for energy, technology on this. And driving force for technology always has been and will continue to be innovation on this, and especially to meet the clean energy revolution. Okay, the PV, the future is here for photovoltaics. It's real now. As you see with all these quarter of a terawatt out there producing power. Okay, I'm sorry, a terawatt producing power out there this last year. Okay, but we're not done. A lot yet has to be done to make photovoltaics come into all these sectors. There's a lot of research and development that has to take place. So there's an area for young researchers and even for some people who are more seasoned in this technology as well. So the only feature about that you couldn't predict is a history we didn't know. Okay, so I gave a little bit of history on this that people seem to think it only started in 2010. Okay, but a lot went to build up the technology to where it was in 2010. And it's easier to grasp the future if you know what it should look like. But that's what all of you haven't done. But you know what the future should look like to be able to contribute to that. Even more, the best way to protect the future is to create it through innovation. And for someone like me, it's truly amazing. Okay, if you have lived this entire 50, 60 years for the development of this technology. So be safe, okay, out there. That's very, very important. Things happening again disrupt us. I don't want to wait for 2 more years to come back to the IIT Bombay. But oops, thank you. So if there are any perovskite people out there, I'm a big proponent of that technology. Are you? Oh. Yeah, sure. I'm not going anywhere right now. Yes, but we have till tomorrow morning. Yeah. So you know the IIT Bombay perovskite work got some exposure last week at that conference from the NREL people who mentioned. That's why I picked up that paper, because they mentioned that the work that perovskites and mentioned IIT Bombay. I think that's very possible. Now they only supply the very good. I've done a lot of things in photovoltaics along the way, and got to do a lot of fun things. I'll show this. I haven't really shown this before, but I was able to be on the cover of National Geographic in Italy, Malaysia, and Brazil on this article that they did about solar energy. And to do that, I stood at the National Geographic had me go to the 22nd floor of the city and county building in Los Angeles. They built this platform out into the off of the balcony out there. And I had to go and stand in that exact corner of that thing. And I'm terrified of heights. But I thought, well, if I do this, maybe I'll get my picture in the magazine. So I did it. So that was it. And I survived that whole thing with the income photovoltaics wrapped around. And all the other ones in the US, I was at center care. So, any questions about things?
You have one question to the truth of outside. It's the tandems which a lot of companies are looking at. You know, the problem has always been that is it worth putting together a high ability within like silicon with peroxide, which is still not, don't really know how well it will, how long it will perform.
Yeah, I think certainly the perovskite people in that case, I don't know if I'm looking back there. We're very, very smart because, you know, this looking perovskites go back only until here that most people look at. Actually, if you look at the literature, this perovskite stuff was done in the 90s with 1% solar cells. So if you look back to here, it came up, but those are the tandems, okay, up here on top. And the reason is it's high efficiency. You know, there's a research cell at 33%. If you could take a silicon module up to 28, 29% with the perovskite, that's a huge boost in the output. So there's power per unit area coming out of it is important. But I think you're right, is that the stable part of this right now is the silicon. And so if you can demonstrate the stability for the perovskite, you have a winner. And that's why every company has a silicon company has a perovskite program because they want to make sure that they're part of this once it fits. And it's not only the silicon people, you know, First Solar has a perovskite. First Solar has a bifacial module that's coming up. First, another perovskites. They're looking at tandems that had telluride on silicon. It's a possibility. All these companies have it because they see this as a possible way to bring down prices. You think of it, it's not too expensive to put down the perovskite, as long as it lasts. Or as one irreverent silicon producer told me, says, well, the worst thing that could happen is that they think these perovskites would make a good anti-reflection program. So if they go bad, hey, listen, you don't give it a chance, you don't know. If we didn't give silicon a chance, PV a chance to operate, we wouldn't be there where we are now. And you know, in the 1980s, India was a leader for photovoltaics, early 1980s on this. And when everything went down, okay, as a result, programs got dropped, funding went away, okay, and only our things now catching up to where we are now installed. I hope the United States comes through with its new programs to be able to get good manufacturing base. But the good news is 2 Indian companies are opening up manufacturing facilities right now in the US. One of them right near where I live, okay, Colorado. And that is Vikram Solar. It's putting in a 6 gigawatt plant with 2 gigawatts cell production. Why? Because the current administration has a big incentive to manufacture, not manufacture. It's worth it when they do it. they get a lot of support. So, and like, once again, it's that now I think that the diversification that it's already happening here in India manufacturing. To get it going in the US, Europe is doing this. I think that's a very, very good part. I think part of this diversification will be corporation and revolution of these newer technologies like the perovskites. I always hate that we gave up. If I had talked to, we gave up on organic photovoltaics. Guess what? All of a sudden, organic photovoltaics is up about 19% in the laboratory. They have companies out there in other countries now using it for building integrated stuff with efficiencies of about 6% on this, very, very inexpensive. Saw just a manufacturer in China reporting organic PV modules, flexible modules at 13.5% themselves. So we gave up in the US on organics. And the organics came back to help the perovskites of this, and now even organics alone. So technology, sometimes we are too soon into technologies. Don't give it time. I don't know. I guess we should ask Leo that because I think he's looked at this a lot more than I have. But I've talked to some Japanese, Toyota that's doing this now. They're looking at what are these cars called, these experimental things with photovoltaics. And some of it started off working with gallium arsenide where you get a lot of power that you could charge the batteries and recharge them up. It's very expensive. But now I see they are going to other techniques on the buildings. I don't know what's going to happen there. We know that you can charge those things with stations that are powered by photovoltaics. Everyone is trying to. But to have fleets like I showed a couple of cars up there that have a PV on them, I think it's still a little ways off. I think that the emphasis right now has to still be on the battery, better energy densities, okay, and also on the rest of that system to be able to charge them more quickly. The fast charge so much work has to go into that area. So maybe it's an area that you're talking about that probably needs a lot before we see before. And I think that many of these things that they do put photovoltaics, on vehicles now. There are many cars you can buy with it. They use them, okay, to power parts. Okay. For instance, they use it to power fans so that if you park the car and leave it, they circulate the air to make the car cooler so that when you come into it, then you don't have to have such a big drain on your air conditioning. So that works, okay, but you're right, to be able to charge the batteries off the vehicle. It's tough. I mentioned before my trip to Saudi Arabia in the 1980s. Okay, when I went there was a guy in Saudi Arabia there who had solar panels on his car. Okay, they were off the side and everything. He claimed it worked fine. Okay, but I said, how do you drive this thing? I said, must weigh 2 tons. He says, well, he says it needs some development. I think that's where we are now. I think that the look is for some of these equipment manufacturers who are in the photovoltaic game originally that are still doing stuff for the microelectronics side of the house, like applied materials, starting now to look about putting in for this. So I think 2 things happen there is that the people who know how to manufacture equipment, okay, have to have some incentive. I think with these markets, they probably will. There have to be something coming to them also. It's not only now, so here, it's not only India, but also the US has a problem. Okay? And I think that as soon as you hear words like forced labor and track it back to some of these producers, you have a problem. So I think that's going to happen. That one thing that something has to come with the people to make it And also it has to be paid in the country by the expertise there. So India is making that, here now, putting in, so that's gonna have to come. They might call for a slowdown for a while. But hey, we've lived through worse things. And every time you have a challenge like that, you also end up with a huge benefit. The benefit is going to be exactly what I have said before, is this global look of manufacturing, not simple. Well, if the perovskites work out, the tandems at silicon, number one. And that's why Oxford PV, for instance, started off in this very, very excellent work in this area. So they're just about probably ready now in 2024 to reduce the problem. So they've done a lot of work on this. So I think that you have to get stuff out there to look at. So I think the first thing you can, and the tandems are more stable, okay, because of the number of that all perovskite. Is it going to go to perovskite tandems? It could, just because you can adjust the band gaps of those materials very well to better accept the solar spectrum. And if I shown this here, I would show some tandems of all perovskite. So our company's doing all perovskites, tandems. A company in the US, Tandem PV, reported that the procedure sponsored puts panels out there expressing mainly again they're worried about their rock stability. So they can get very good performance in Colorado. It always comes down to the stable. Easiest right now to do it on silicon, because you have a stable base on that, as Dr. Box said, silicon. Okay, but it may come into these other things as well. It's stabilities that now you showed excellent now show out of that. The question comes is how long is it? This is that's the best. With that, these talk about what are we going to do with the power. And then says, who's making this cars here? Partially. So let's see this now. I'm a big advocate of the first measure it's in the same boat, the guy with the record is up there to get the highest efficiency. Not anymore. I think that at least in the short term, other environmental things that a lot has to get more has to go into those for observations and the best. So you have a lot of possibility. You could win a Nobel Prize with your work for aspects.
Thanks.
But I have one thing. I think for the National Academy person, I think you need, in fact, you're worried that no, these are past every tie I've ever, I designed ties because I thought there was no money in this photovoltaic stuff. So I decided to do this. But for you, I think with your this is perfect that you have a solar tie. And as you can see, this is me. Okay. So this is only on behalf of INAE. Yeah, so you can wear this at the INAE. I must appreciate the effort that you have taken to, taken photographs and videos and animations. Really good, very inspiring. Yeah, but it comes very bad now that we still have to do this over the web. That's the only good part is that what happened with COVID is we would go with classes and we would go with doing lectures and everything on this. It's that I was happy to look down that I had pants on because before you only had a dress and stuff. I mean, So, hey, great, thank you very, very much for doing this as well.
Yeah, Professor Kaz and team, this is Muralidharan from LMAG Bombay section. On behalf of the Bombay section LMAG, I would like to thank you very much for the interesting talk.
If not, now I'm going to ask you what this is.
Any questions from the online audience?
You have no idea, huh?
I would like to thank Professor Kaz for an interesting lecture
But this is
from the
not
IEEE Bombay section LMAG.
original iPhone. Okay, without the telephone, so they call this a radio. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but this was the first solar radio done in 1958, the same time that IIT Bombay was founded. Okay, on this, and the solar cells are on top of this whole thing. Hoffman Electronics did this as a product, but it didn't go. Why? You could buy the radio for about $6. The radio with the solar cells sold for $90. So people rather invested in the batteries. It was digital technology though, because if you look at the side of this, someplace, or on the back here, it has a switch that you switch it from solar cells to batteries. So it's digital.
So we can end the meeting now. Thank you.